Hey everybody, welcome to Networks 2021. I'm Juniper Lovato, and today I'm going to be talking to you about distributed consent. I'd like to thank my co-authors, and you can check out our preprint on the arXiv. Here we're concerned with how big data and network systems challenge classical notions of privacy, whose legitimacy really relies on individual self-determination and consent. In this project, we argue that this may not be the most appropriate model for social data transactions. And don't get me wrong, consent does a lot of really important normative work. It has this moral magic that transforms impermissible acts to permissible ones. And this is really important in sexual and medical activities, among others. And consent really allows individuals to put themselves and their autonomy into a vulnerable situation. But they'll do so with the knowledge that it has strict constraints and they're doing it with a trusted party. There are a number of criteria for legitimate consent, and these really have to do with the subject being in full understanding, entering in the agreement intentionally without being coerced, and the agreement really authorizing a very specific course of action. What we argue in this project is that these may not hold up in terms of data that's transacted, that's social data. And this is for a number of reasons. One being that terms of service really task non-experts to consent to things that they don't fully understand, and this really takes advantage of an asymmetry in technical and legal knowledge. The second being that it's hard to just opt out of an online social network. Online platforms like these are an incredibly important social ecology where people form personhood and maintain relationships and build networked counterpublics. And yet there's very little power on the side of the user to negotiate with these companies about their privacy. The third being that the sheer volume of consent requests has really led to quite a bit of user fatigue, where users are habitually agreeing to all requests. And this delegitimizes the premise that each act of consent is a user's autonomous judgment. And then finally, the service agreements are typically so broad and flexible for the data processor that it makes it difficult to track the data lifecycle of the data and hold them accountable for any misuse. Further, information is not discrete, it's distributed and contains information about more than a single individual. A fundamental assumption for individual consent is that the user has power over their personal data, and they can kind of trade this personal privacy in exchange for using an online service. These data, in reality, may not wholly be this individual, so maybe it's not appropriate that they act alone in controlling the free flow of these data. And this is because social network data has these special kind of properties like homophily, and frankly, data online is leaky. So when we're allowing a platform to gain access to our contacts or group photos or even something as sort of protected as our genetic data, this can harm implicated contacts who did not directly consent to share this information. Here we introduce a model of distributed consent where individuals and groups can coordinate by giving consent that is conditional on that of their network connections. So in our model, we suggest a new security setting for a platform like Facebook where you only share your information with network neighbors who share the same taste for privacy and do not share data with third-party apps. And we use this model to see how adoption of distributed consent protects people in a social network against surveillance. Note that under this observability process, that the orange nodes who follow a distributed consent model are much less likely to be observed than nodes that are following the traditional consent options. And they also help to sort of protect some of the neighbors with the standard security setting. We don't have time to get into the details here, but I wanted to go into a few of the takeaways. Distributed consent can help protect you on a single platform from your friends and your friends' friends, but distributed consent alone cannot protect you if your security settings are not coordinated across platforms. And these results stress that multi-platform ecosystems are just incredibly complex and difficult to protect. Users participating in multiple platforms are really only as secure as their weakest security settings. This coordination, obviously, though, should be taken further. Effective data privacy measures will need to take a systems level approach and integrate a mechanism for distributed moral responsibility that will involve understanding both the top down and the bottom up interdependencies in the system. And doing so will really involve a synergy between local and global leaders and viewers like you. Take a look at our preprint, and thank you so much for listening.